Exactly 1 week has passed since Kiev security forces entered Slavyansk that had been left by militias. The story told to us by the inhabitant of a refugee camp in Rostov region took place at approximately the same time. She told us about public execution. The woman introduced herself as Galina from Slavyansk, a mother of 4 children, had born in western Ukraine. Her relatives were unhappy that her husband joined militias. The conversation with Galina left difficult feelings. Mind refuses to believe how something like this can ever be possible nowadays in the center of Europe. Heart does not believe that this could be possible at all. On the other hand, here is her story. The Lenin Square is the city center with the city council on one side. This is the only square where people can be gathered. They gathered women on the square simply because there were no men left. They gathered women, girls and seniors, then this was called a public execution. They took a child, 3-year-old, a small boy in panties and t-shirt, and they nailed him like Jesus to the bulletin board. One was nailing and 2 others were holding. All this was in front of mother's eyes. They were holding mother, and she was watching how her child was bleeding, crying and screaming, and then they made 2 cuts on him here so that the child would suffer. People were losing their consciousness there. Then, after the child had suffered for 1.5 hours and died, they took his mother, tied her unconscious to a tank and drove 3 circles around the square.
Прив'язали до танка без сознання і по площаді 3 круга провели, а круг площаді кілометр.
The story mentioned above is a clear example of a fake produced by the machine of Russian propaganda and grounded on a staged interview with actor instead of a real-life hero. So-called Galina was even not aware that the central square in Slavyansk is not the Lenin Square, but instead the October Revolution Square. Moreover, there were no photos or videos as well as any witness who could prove the crucifixion. The only evidence of crucified boy is a picture with Vladimir Putin in the gym. Russian media performances sometimes led to oversights and confusion. On April 2014, depending on which Russian government broadcaster you watched, NTV or Россия-1, you could observe the same person either as a German mercenary financing Euromaidan protest in Ukraine or a peaceful pro-Russian patriot who was pummeled by the radicals from the right sector. At the beginning, we have a sensational confession of a German citizen who was injured several days ago near the building of Nikolaev Regional Administration. During the conversation with our reporters, he told us about the purpose of his visit to Ukraine. As we found out, the foreign visitor had been preparing a group of 50 people for military actions, and all participants of this group were citizens of Western Europe. He personally had paid the money up front before they participated in military actions, although he is just an intermediate in a complex financial scheme. The mercenary refused to tell who had stood behind him. First, I brought money for Maidan camp from Germany. How much, if not a secret? 500,000 euros. I bought 50 sets of uniform. To be more specific, I ordered them and paid for the order. It should be ready in 1 week at your commissary. On the same day, the other Russian TV channel, Россия-1, presented the same man in the opposite role. Today, it becomes clear that the attacks on the supporters of federalization in Nikolaev involved participation of authorities. In the video, one can see that the militants of the right sector were brought to the city by buses accompanied by soldiers. The radicals were armed and police obeyed them in everything. Report on details. They were shooting non-stop. Concussion, compound fracture of shin and facial burns with necrosis. 40 years old Andrei Petkov will not be able to walk for half a year. Now he is preparing for surgery. On April 7th, Andrei came as usual to the central square to declare his disagreement with the action of the new government. Unexpectedly, radicals arrived and started a real massacre. He put a gun to my head and said, "I will kill you, take off your ribbon of St. George." I said, "No, you can shoot." And then girls ran up and hit him with a leg and he rolled away. Later, after the host of the bifacial Petkov has been exposed, the Gazprom-owned NTV channel explained the contradiction. The international man of mystery suffers from schizophrenia. It was said that Petkov had never worked or traveled abroad, and once he had woke up and imagined himself as a German millionaire. Russia keeps coming up with its own theories of MH17 crash in order to cover up its inhuman crime of murdering 298 innocent people. This video provides the list of Kremlin theories on MH17 crash sorted into chronological order. The long story of lie on the tragedy began on 17 July 2014, when the Russian TV channel Live News reported about the successful downing of Ukrainian plane by Russia-backed separatists, which later turned out to be MH17 plane. The insurgents report that they had managed to shut down one more transport plane of Ukrainian Air Force. This happened above the town of Torez in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. Later, the Russian ambassador to United Nations Vitaly Churkin defended the separatists, claiming that the downed MH17 plane had been just a mistake.
The people from the east were saying that they shot down a military jet. So if they shot down a military jet, there was confusion. If there was confusion, it was not an act of terrorism.
After it had been found that the downed plane was a passenger plane, Russian media started to spread a story that Ukrainians had wanted to shoot down Putin's presidential plane but missed.
Russia's Interfax news agency is quoting a source in the Russian aviation industry claiming President Putin's plane may have actually been the target of the attack. It is claimed that the president's jet crossed paths over Warsaw at the exact same height as the doomed Boeing, now just 40 minutes later. The planes were said to share a similar form and the colors of red, white, and blue, which of course is Russia's flag. And a spokesperson for Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency refused to give any details, stating that they never comment on the routes of the president and other top officials.
Sometime later, Russian media changed their point of view again and informed that it was actually Ukrainian military plane Su-25 that shot down Malaysian Boeing. Now we have a sensational image presumably made by a foreign spy satellite during the last seconds of the flight of the Malaysian Boeing over Ukraine. The image confirms the theory which had never been considered by the West. The Boeing was shot down by a chasing jet fighter. Firstly, the crew was shot from cannon, and then the cabin was hit with an air-to-air missile. In a moment, the right engine and the right wing were hit with a homing missile. On 2 June 2015, shortly after the first leaks from the Dutch Safety Board investigation on MH17 crash had appeared, Russia claimed that MH17 was indeed shot by Buk missile. However, it was Ukrainian, not Russian one.
На основе проведенных расчетов был определен наиболее вероятный район.
Based on the calculations, we determined the most probable area from which the missile had been launched. This is a locality south to village of Zaroshinskaya. In July 2014, Zaroshinskaya was under control of the Ukrainian army. This area could be seen at the photographs presented by the Minister of Defense in previous year. One could observe that the Ukrainian Buks were relocated there before the tragedy.
Дислоцированы буки украинской армии как раз накануне трагедии.
On 18 July 2015, just 2 days after CNN had released the information on the international investigation of MH17 crash and accused Russia in shooting down the plane, Russian media made another sensational statement.
По моему мнению, Боинг, по моей оценке, Боинг был сбит самолетом МиГ-29.
I think that Boeing was shot down by MiG-29 plane at 5:21 p.m. on 17 July 2014. In my opinion, it was either MiG from the 40th Brigade based in Vasilkiv or from the 25th Regiment based in Ivano-Frankovsk. The latter proved by the fact that Ukraine has a sad experience of using soldiers from the western regions in such conflicts.
История использования военнослужащих западных областей в таких конфликтах.
International Tribunal on MH17 crash is looking forward to consider the numerous Russian truthful theories of MH17 crash. The only problem is that Russia opposes the creation of the International Tribunal on the investigation of MH17 tragedy.